people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Per a tweet from Dan Raphael, per source, with Avril Matthew dropping out, Ebony Bridges will now defend the IBF bantamweight title against Japan's own Miyo Yoshida, former WBO champion at super flyweight turned bantamweight contender, on the Haney vs. Prograis pay-per-view undercard December 9th.
My thoughts.
As strange as this might sound, Miyo Yoshida, she has been a champion before, and she does have more fights and more rounds in the bank than both Ebony Bridges and Avril Matthew. Avril, who's never been a champion before. In spite of this, I feel like Avril would have given Ebony a much better fight than Miyo Yoshida is about to. Miyo Yoshida, who was in action last month opposite the ring Yoshida Metcalf, and we talked about that fight.
I picked Yoshida Metcalf to beat Miyo Yoshida on points because Miyo Yoshida, in spite of having been a champion, she has very slow feet, very slow hands, poor form, and poor coordination.
Miyo Yoshida, she's been a champion before, and she has more fights than Ebony, more fights than Avril, but she's not as good a fighter as they are. She's slow on her feet, slow hands, and she makes a lot of mistakes. Pushing with her punches, lunging in,
leaning over her lead foot and leaving herself open to be countered.
She flurries quite a bit when she can get within striking distance of her opponent, but her flurries look like little more than arm punches, and she often loses form when she does it. For Ebony Bridges, this is actually a step down from Avril Matthew, though we can hardly blame Ebony for Avril getting injured. Unbeknownst to most, Avril Matthew,
she's injury prone. She gets injured a lot.
At least the last 3 or 4 years or so, I vaguely recall Avril Matthew getting injured once or twice before this recent injury. It's not really Ebony's fault that happened, and you can hardly blame Ebony for landing on Miyo Yoshida, given this kind of notice. We're a little more than 2 weeks out from the proposed fight date, December 9th, they had to find someone who could fight, who'd be willing to fight on that kind of notice. Enter Miyo Yoshida, who is promoted by Lou DiBella in this part of the world, and as stated, she's coming right off a loss to Yoshida Metcalf. With Yoshida, Miyo had to try to play catch-up.
Yoshida is a long and limber outside fighter, outside jabber, a mover. She'll be facing the exact opposite with Ebony Bridges, but it's not going to fare any better for Miyo Yoshida because Ebony is good at all the things
Miyo tries to do. Ebony is good at all the things Miyo tries to be good at. Miyo Yoshida is a mid-range to inside fighter, and so is Ebony Bridges. Ebony Bridges is your, according to Hoyle, pressure fighter, close quarters fighter, and she's much better than Miyo by and large. This will be Ebony's first fight with Adam Caldwell in her corner.
She's not with Mark Tibbs anymore. Ebony has sat out the better portion of this year. The last time she saw action was in December of last year, and now she's returning to action in December of this one.
This fight, what was supposed to be the Avril Matthew fight, that was intended to be little more than just a takeover fight, a keep busy fight for Ebony as she snaps back from that stint of inactivity, and that's what the Miyo Yoshida fight is going to be.
A takeover. I anticipate that in spite of having to shake off some ring rust, Ebony Bridges is going to be too good for Miyo Yoshida in the pocket, mid-range to inside.
She's a more defensible fighter, throws shorter and tighter hooks than Miyo Yoshida, protects herself better, and she's got more pop. She's got more power than Miyo Yoshida. So if Miyo tries to box her on the inside, she's going to get a rude awakening. As far as the aesthetic of the match, I anticipate it's going to be a fan-friendly fight, but it's going to be a fight that Ebony Bridges dominates. And there is some pressure on Ebony to make big things happen because she's 37 years old now.
Mio is 35.
Ebony's not getting any younger. There has been an expectation that beyond this fight, at some point, Ebony will unify titles with another Matchroom fighter, another champion at this weight, in Nina Hughes.
WBA champion. She's a lot better off trying her luck with Nina than she would be trying her luck with Dina. The only unified champion at this weight, Dina Thorsland, reigning WBO and WBC champion. Younger and more experienced than Ebony Bridges.
Ebony just has to take care of business with Mio, and she can see about doing that, unifying with Nina. And I think she can. I think she's going to. She might knock out Mio Yoshida. We'll see what happens December 9th.
Okay, Panda, for both of you guys, Haney or Regis Prograis, who wins?
¿Quién gana de Haney o Regis
Me
Prograis?
gustaría pelear con cualquiera del ganador.
Pero ¿quién gana? Te pregunta quién.
Por eso que gana cualquiera.
It's a 50-50 fight, but he just wants to make sure that he fights the winner.
Absolutely. What do you think?
I think Devin Haney should win this fight.
I think Regis stops him. I think Regis by knockout.
Wow.
Okay, what about you and Rolly? Big fight?
Rolly.
Rolling es campeón de mentira.
Rolly's a fake champion.
¿Por qué? Why?
Because he look like Joker. He not a real fighter.
He's undefeated.
No, he isn't.
Undefeated? Nah, he lost.
Okay, what about, he won.
Got knocked out by Gervonta Davis. Did Ellie Seckback miss it?
But what about you? Who am I missing at 140? Teofimo, big fight?
I like this in Madison Square Garden.
What do you think?
You would like that fight at the Madison Square Garden?
Prediction for that fight?
Between who?
Him and Teo.
We know it's a good fight, but he's gonna. We know that Subriel. It's hard to find a fighter that with that pressure.
They're gonna stop.
Okay.
You know who I am.
You and Ryan Garcia, big fight? He's now 140?
Really good fight. I like this fight.
Okay, if he fights Haney, what happens?
He gonna run the ring a lot.
And then what happens when you catch him? Buenas noches?
Yeah, he know.
Okay, you and Gervonta, big fight?
Oh yeah, two big punches.
Let's be honest, the majority of those names that Ellie Seckback mentioned are not going to want to have anything to do with Subriel Matias because there is just not a big enough cash incentive to get those guys in the ring with him, the risks that he poses. This guy literally killed a man in the ring. The only one who's probably got the right set of ingredients for Subriel Matias is Regis Prograis. Regis Prograis, who wants that fight for the coming year, but he has to get past Devin Haney first.
And he might not. Styles, as they say, styles make fights. And Devin Haney has the right style for a counterpuncher.
An economic fighter that doesn't really throw that many punches and put together that many combinations until he lands the big counter, until he lands a big shot. And if Devin Haney can keep it long, loose, on the outside, and on the move, Regis may not get the chance to land that big counter.
He might lose. The boxer puncher's kryptonite, the counter puncher's kryptonite, is the pure boxer, the outside fighter, and that's what Devin is.
But Regis has the right set of ingredients. He's got the right base style for a guy like Subriel Matias. In truth, so does Teofimo Lopez, and so does Gervonta Davis in terms of base styles. They've got the right base style for the job, but do they have the right durability, the right power? Can they actually get Subriel Matias' respect when the both of them are naturally smaller men, smaller fighters than Subriel Matias? I mean, Gervonta Davis, he used to compete as low as 130, and Teofimo, he moved up from 135.
What happens with guys like this is, the big promotional engine is more behind them than a guy like Subriel Matias, so it's difficult for a casual audience, a casual observer, to envision them losing to a guy like Subriel, a guy with a low profile.
If I tell you that both Gervonta Davis and Teofimo Lopez, they may have the right base style for the job, but they may not have the size for it. If I tell you that maybe Subriel is a bit too big and a bit too strong for those guys, in spite of those guys being more well-known, some might think
You're crazy.
it's not as crazy as it sounds. Gervonta Davis is a hard puncher at 130 and 135, but at 140, he needed weight stipulations for Mario Barrios, and Mario Barrios is no Subriel Matias. He needed weight stipulations for that guy, and he needed weight stipulations for Ryan Garcia. Not just the catch weight, but a rehydration clause. And if you needed that for a glorified prospect, I don't like your chances against the naturally bigger, harder puncher in Subriel Matias. With Teofimo,
once again, here's a guy who has the right base style for the job, and he can punch. He's got speed, he's got reflexes, he's got power, and he has the right strategy. But I don't know if he can take Subriel Matias's punches, what seems to happen with Subriel.
maybe he gets off to a slow start, a rocky start. The other guys, say a Jeremias Ponce, say a Shohan Ergashev, they'll start off the fight all right, all the while Subriel is getting in with small shots, getting in here and there. He may lose the round, but still land some punches. And what punches he does land, mid-range to inside, they do seem to do a lot of damage quickly. They don't look like much at first.
Not at first, but before you know it, he's beating the crap out of the other guy. His last 5 or 6 fights, he's forced the man opposite the ring to quit, to give up.
So many times in the sport of boxing, top-tier promotion is confused with top-tier ability. And that's not saying that these young fighters don't have ability. They have ability, but this guy's a full 140. He's not some little guy that moved up, and he's actually killed a man.
Stylistically, fighters like Gervonta and Teofimo Lopez, stylistically they have an edge because they have a penchant for hanging back and letting the aggressive fighter come forward, setting up that aggressive fighter for hard counters. But what happens if the hard counter ain't all that hard?
These are not natural 140s per se, and these are not prolific punchers, Gervonta and Teofimo. They don't actually throw all that many punches in a round. In a round, they're looking to counter the guy hard, then move in. Well, what if you get off your hard counter and it's not that hard? It doesn't have the effect on Subriel that it has on naturally smaller fighters.
This guy throws a lot of punches once he gets going, and you might be able to avoid some, but not all. What does get in, it does seem to do damage rather quickly. Why give Regis the benefit of the doubt? Well, Regis is a natural 140. He's not a little guy like Gervonta or Teofimo, though he is older.
That's a problem. Because Subriel is a mid-range to inside volume puncher, a pressure guy, a mean one, you can use that aggression against him. You can.
But that's provided you have enough power, enough pop to get his respect. If you can't, you end up like Shohan Ergashev, who got off to a great start the first 2 rounds and ended up quitting after 4. You end up like Shohan Ergashev, you end up like Jeremias Ponce.
These guys were landing punches. They were both landing punches on Subriel, but after a while, they couldn't hold him back and they couldn't hold him off. And if you can't hold him off, he's going to overwhelm you. He's going to overpower you. The question is, do you think that either Teofimo or Gervonta can hold this guy back? I'm not sure they can.
First off, I would like to thank you for inviting me here. I feel very good. We knew it would be a difficult fight, but I knew I had enough to beat Demetrius Andrade. Truthfully, I think that the fight between me and Canelo should be in May of 2024. We're ready. We're ready for this opportunity, and I want to give the fans what they want. Hey, David, question. Does Canelo need David Benavidez, or does David Benavidez need Canelo? Well, truthfully, I think both of us. He needs me and I need him. He's a legend in the sport. And I think that for me to do what I want to do in boxing, in Mexican boxing, I need to fight Canelo. To get to that level, to be a legend in the sport.
David Benavidez seems to have held a confab with the people at the World Boxing Council, pushing for them to order the fight between him and Canelo for Cinco de Mayo of the following year. I think most of the fight fans, if not all of the fight fans, the Canelo fans, the Benavidez fans, they would like to see that fight sooner than later. But a few weeks ago, there was a tweet that indicated that Canelo may end up fighting Jaime Munguia in May and David in September, which would leave David with very little to do from now until September.
Then you find themselves asking if that's the plan, that's the schedule, Munguia in May and David in September. Why fight Munguia? Why not just skip the foreplay and go straight into the David Benavidez fight?
The money. Whether people want to acknowledge it or not, a fight between Canelo and Jaime on Cinco de Mayo generates a lot of money. And so would a fight with David. Better still, that would be the rationale. And one fight would serve as a rehearsal of sorts for the other. They have a few things in common, Jaime Munguia and David Benavidez, that they're both taller than Canelo Alvarez, somewhat longer and younger, and they're both pressure fighters. They apply pressure slightly different.
What separates them is Jaime fights in spurts. He fights in bursts, releasing 3, 4, 5 punch combinations in bursts, whereas the pressure from David is a bit more constant.
It's one of the more noticeable differences between them, and that David is a bit bigger than Jaime Munguia, though you would use a similar strategy for the both of them. The strategy being using that aggression against them, because neither one of these two is a defensive wizard. And the way to beat a bully-style fighter with a bully-like style isn't to retreat and create space and try and stay on the outside. No, what you've got to do with a bully is confront them. Hold your ground and fight them off. Counter-punchers.
Counter-punching is the ticket, and it's like people forgot that Canelo Alvarez is a talented counter-puncher and a harder puncher than anybody Jaime's fought and David Benavidez. For his big win this past weekend, when the hell was Demetrius Andrade ever considered a puncher of any kind?
David was able to walk him down and wear him out because Demetrius has never been known as a puncher, and he's never had all that good of an engine. I said it in the build-up of the fight. This guy might start off all right, but he has a penchant for fading down the stretch. He just faded a lot faster than I thought he would. All the same,
I picked David to win that fight, but I'm not picking him to win this one because his aggression and his volume punching.
Against a counter-puncher, he's wide open. A counter-puncher like Canelo Alvarez, who actually has power. David Benavidez and Jaime Munguia alike have yet to face anybody that has power.
What really troubles Canelo ain't pressure guys and volume guys like David or Jaime. What troubles Canelo, what has troubled him in the past, are boxers, particularly pure boxers, like Floyd Mayweather, like Dimitri Bivol, movers.
And defensive specialists, not artillery fighters like Jaime and David. David doesn't actually do anything better than Canelo Alvarez. He's just bigger, but Canelo Alvarez fights guys bigger than he is all the time. And if he doesn't have to chase you, if he doesn't have to track you down, you're doing half the work for him. By coming forward, by opening up. He fights on a swivel, moving his head, moving his torso, or catching and shooting out of that high guard. Those short, sharp counters.
How's David gonna take those? How's he gonna take those body shots? It's much easier for Canelo to make 168 than it is for David. Canelo doesn't have to kill himself to make that weight. David does.
David may throw more punches in a round than Canelo Alvarez does, but that's a quality over quantity argument. That's why Canelo was able to stop Caleb Plant throwing less punches than David, who threw more and didn't stop him.
Quality over quantity. I want to see the fight. I want to see the fight in May. I want to see it in September. I just want to see it.
The idea that you're just going to stand in front of Canelo, letting your hands go shoulder square, and nothing's going to come back at you, that you won't pay for it.
Boxing fans being slaves to the moment, let me remind you of something. This is not Demetrius Andrade we're talking about.
This is Canelo.